I am not a fan of people setting up office hours just for the sake of office hours.
Sure.
Like, we're going to have an hour meeting every Thursday and you show up and, blah, blah. No, we just decided we're not going to get around the fact that we need somebody that can like go in, assess, unblock, and get out. So now we have a very kind of like window of time where people have access to this link. It's basically just using Calendly, and you get certain, times blocked off.
Mm-hmm.
So it protects, our internal resources calendar.
Right.
And it also gives the end user, our customer, what they're looking for,
Mm-hmm.
which is dedicated time to like look at this thing on my screen and help me figure out what the heck I did wrong.
And once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Success Podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as I seek out and interview leaders and practitioners who are innovating and building great scaled CS programs. My goal is to share what I've learned and to bring you along with me for the ride so that you get the insights that you need to build and evolve your own digital CS program. If you'd like more info, want to get in touch, or sign up for the latest updates, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. For now, let's get started. Hello and welcome to episode 42 of the Digital Customer Success Podcast. And in case you couldn't tell, I got myself a cold and I'm on the rebound, but wanted to at least do a little intro for you. If you're watching on YouTube, there's definitely no video involved in this intro at all. Today's conversation is with Erica Akroyd of Pendo. She has been at Pendo for quite some time and has done a myriad of different things at Pendo. Most notably, I think, especially in relation to this podcast, is she's led the digital or scaled teams and now currently runs the customer education team, both of which are very relevant to this show. So we dig into all kinds of wonderful topics related to digital CS, but then also customer education. She drops some hot takes on office hours and, just really how to facilitate that happy path digitally with your customers. So I do hope that you enjoy this conversation with Erica Akroyd, because I sure did. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So happy to have you. It's been a little while coming, and we've traded lots of messages. We've met several times. In fact, the first time I met you is when we were evaluating Pendo, and then didn't have budget to buy anything. So, yeah.
We do have a free product, though, by the way. So,
yeah, exactly. But no excuses at all. Yeah, get that cookie in there. I find Pendo fascinating, but I find your kind of history within Pendo equally fascinating. So I was really happy to have you on the show. I know that you were recently on the BS and CS Crew show as well, which is super fun to listen to, and whatnot. The one thing that I did learn on that show, not the one thing, I learned several things on that show. But the one thing I wanted to ask you about, just kind of in opening, is how, you mentioned your husband was Dan Akroyd's nephew, or somebody mentioned that. And it's like, was it really? It was a total joke? I was like, is that real?
I always I'm like, yep, that's true, because I think people really want it to be true. I want it to be true, but
that's hilarious.
It's so not true.
I totally missed that. Does that go in your two truths and a lie like all the time?
No, it should.
Do people even play two truths and a lie anymore?
I haven't played that in so long. Thank God.
Thank God. Yeah, I played it about a year ago, and I was like, really?
Yeah, I don't like it, but I should add that in. I just feel like people would love to believe that that's my truth.
Yeah, you're just going to play two truths and a lie just because of that. Yeah, totally. Well, currently you're leading the customer education function at Pendo, which is cool. I love customer education. It's like the unsung hero a lot of times of like helping to get folks to where they need to go in terms of their outcome. But I think your journey into that role is very interesting, just because you do have a super rich customer success background. And I don't think, that isn't very common. I mean, people kind of follow an education path and then they kind of
then that's the path. So I'd love to kind of get your sense on, how your CS kind of background and or CS history with Pendo has informed that.
I honestly think that a lot of the things that I've done at Pendo would only have only happened because I work at a company like Pendo with a software like Pendo. Because to me, we've been doing product-led or scaled customer success since I started using the tool. It just, we were so lucky that we had this tool to make it so easy for us to do these types of things at scale and communicate at scale and use data to inform a lot of our playbooks. Mm-hmm. So I honestly, just like I never thought I would be a product manager, I never thought I would end up in a customer education org, because I kind of just associated like LMS and instructional design. And I'm like, I know nothing about that. Yeah. But, we saw an opportunity where the education team was under the product org. And I saw an opportunity where I could go over there and kind of really expand what education at Pendo, or even just what education as a whole means to, a SaaS business. Yeah. And really, like, that's where true self-serve, that's where the true foundational kind of like layer of education and product adoption can really start. And my kind of big stance has been just like all the things that my team works on, whether it's in product messaging, help center articles, video content, like that's all the stuff that should just be like foundational for all of our customers, regardless of how big or small they are.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is, I think you can't really have a solid kind of, self-serve environment unless you have the content to back that up, because otherwise it's just going to be, more humans involved in the mix. And that's not the goal.
Yeah. And I think if we hadn't really been focused on our free offering, I don't think my world would have collided with that group. So yeah, a lot of that, my career just is like happenstance, or being in the right place at the right time, or kind of finding my niche within a role, and then people really seeing and gravitating towards what we're doing and then pulling it in. So.
Yeah, for sure. Which is actually one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, which is you seem to have an innate ability to deal with ambiguous situations like very well. Like there's something new that gets thrown your way. Maybe you do, maybe you don't know anything about it. You just kind of dive right in, much like you did with product management. And I would imagine there was some learning about SCORM files and stuff like that with education services.
I still know nothing about SCORM files. Thank God.
What
I know what they are.
What is the? Yeah, exactly. Well, that's about all you need to know. Yeah. But what is that? How does that kind of manifest itself in you, and what is your approach and your mentality into dealing with those types of situations and just tackling it?
Yeah. I think I just always start with like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What's the data telling us? And then, I really just love a challenge. I listen. I love, what is the problem we're trying to solve? Try something new, like treat it as an experiment. I definitely learned this in product management where, there's no failures in experiment. So calling things an experiment kind of lowers the bar a little bit of trying something new. So see if it works. If it does, keep going. If it doesn't, you iterate, but no failures in experiments. There's only learnings. And so that's kind of the mentality that I've brought to each of these kind of situations where they need a new leader or something's not working, and just kind of go in and try to learn as much as I can. Like, I never want anyone to think that I come into a situation where I'm like, oh, I'm the expert because I was put here. It's like, I knew nothing about product management, but I spent a lot of time researching, and taking courses. I knew nothing about customer education, but I spent a lot of time like learning more about, what does education mean at Pendo, and what is education as a whole. And I think as long as you do that, you kind of start to learn how your skill set fits in with what they're looking for, and then what to do from there.
It's true. I mean, this all speaks to, I think, your abilities as a leader, and your approach to leadership, I think, is a really healthy one. And it's obvious that, the company feels good about putting you in those situations, because they know you're just gonna, kill it and grill it and take it home and fix stuff, and which is really cool. But yeah, I mean, to your point, like, as a leader, it's really more around, like you said, analyzing what is the problem we're trying to solve, what resources do we have to solve them, what expertise can you surround yourself with to solve those problems, versus knowing everything yourself. That's not ideal.
Not ideal, for sure.
Yeah. Well, obviously, this is the Digital CS podcast. I ask all my guests the same fundamental question, which is, I'd love your kind of 10, 30-second elevator pitch of digital CS, scaled CS, and what it means to you, based on your background and history and expertise.
Yeah. I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, where I just think a digital approach or a scaled approach to customer success really should be the foundation of any customer success program across any customer segment. So it's not in place of humans. I think a lot of times people associate digital with replacing humans, but allowing CSM
a lot of times.
Yeah. But to me, it's driving more impact with the people that you have. So allowing humans to do what they do best and be more effective in their roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that last bit too is something that a lot of people miss, is allowing people to be more effective in their roles. They think it's just, we're going to send some emails, we're going to do some in-app, we're going to do some surveys, and there's our, digital program, versus like, how do we make our humans as effective as possible?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Can you, so you spent a fair amount of time, scaling CS programs at Pendo, and you've since moved into this education role. Can you talk a little bit about, maybe a little bit deeper into what that interplay is between, the education offerings and some of the, motions that are in place? I mean, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I want to get a little bit more tactical as to, what that really looks like, and how it's used practically.
Yeah. So we on the education team now, our mantra is to solve for the 80%. And what that means to us is we're never going to figure out the solution for every single user, because there's way too many personas that use our product. There's way too many use cases or outcomes that people are trying to drive. So we have to just do the best that we can, because perfect is the enemy of good. And, we are really there to help people understand how to use the software and how that's going to drive their outcomes. We are not going to cover all the nuances and all the complexities. There's just no way. So, in everything that we do, we try to solve for the 80%, knowing that, there's going to be those layers of humans on top of that, whether it be one-to-many, doing webinars, things like that, user groups, or one-to-one intervention where it's, you've got risk, you've got large enterprise customers, people with dedicated reps, things like that. So we are not trying to solve all the world's problems with what we're doing. And so it helps to always keep that frame of mind.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to dig into one point that you made just a bit ago, which was around the use cases and kind of the desired outcomes. Because I think at the core of a digital program is knowing, like, what your customers' intended outcomes are. And I think in some cases it's very easy. Like some vendors or some platforms, it's maybe like 2-3 outcomes that customers are pushing for on a repeated basis. Some, I'm in that situation included. I mean, there's a list, you know, there's
Same.
yeah,
Pendo.
yeah. It's like there's a list, and it's not short. It's like, you know, it's in the teens or maybe 20s or
Yeah.
so, and that's where I think it gets particularly dicey and particularly challenging in solving for that. And I don't know where I'm going with this, other than to ask you, like, how
Help?
like what? Because, you know, again, you can't curate this thing as cleanly as you could if there were one or two, you know, consistent
Mhm.
outcomes.
Yeah. I think this is, again, I hate to say this, and I'm really, really not trying to plug Pendo constantly on this
Yeah.
podcast, I promise you. But if I didn't have Pendo, I would be completely like dependent on our product team to like do these things for us, to like make product changes. So I'll give you an example. Our product, when you register for a new account, we ask you what your role is and what your use case is. So that's great for all the first registrants,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know anything about people if they're added later,
Yeah.
except we implemented these in-app guides for all new users added to an account that asks, what do you want to do?
Right.
So if we didn't have a tool like Pendo, we would not be able to make it a true, like, relevant, you know, curated experience for these users.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess, like, if you don't have a tool like Pendo, that would be, you know, my recommendation is like, you've got to get in front of the product team, and you've got to, you know, talk about how important it is to know what your customers, like, desired outcomes, job to be done, whatever you want to call it, something to know, like, why did they come here?
Yeah.
And that way you have that data, because without that data, you're flying blind.
Totally. Yeah. You can put stuff out there all you want, but, you know, connecting the dots becomes the hard part. So are there curated, like, content streams? I mean, I'm guessing there are, but, like, based on, let's say I'm Joe and I select this outcome or this outcome, what does that look like afterwards?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you get an in-product kind of experience that, based off of your selection, we provide you with like a use case video from our customers. So it's kind of, we call How I Pendo story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just like whatever we're feeding you. It's like our customers are saying these things and this is what they've done. So we have an in-app experience, but we also realize, like, not everybody likes to go through a walkthrough in product.
Right.
So then we, you know, link you out to a knowledge base, and then we follow up with an email based off of your selection to say, here are some resources that you might, you know, enjoy. So everything is kind of tied back to that first, like, login experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Are there, I mean, I can count on probably multiple hands of things that I've tried that haven't quite landed, but eventually kind of led to success, you know. And I think I'm guessing you've kind of experienced some of that, both in your current role, maybe a previous role as well, where you've tried stuff, it didn't quite stick, but you learned a super valuable lesson. Do you have any examples of things like that as kind of like a cautionary tale?
Oh yeah, so many. I mean, I think it's important to, like, the one that stands out is trying to recreate success that we had with a previous, like, one-to-many program. So when we first kind of got started with these new user overview webinars, we were doing them bi-weekly. And this was really just an effort to get our inbound email volume down. It was like insane how many emails we were getting and questions we were getting. And most of it was centered just around basics of how to use the product. So we were getting like hundreds of registrants every 2 weeks consistently. So we were like, we're on fire. We thought, oh, okay, we'll try another topic. We were getting a lot of, like, asks to do something a little bit more technical. And the persona was more nuanced. So we were like, all right, we're going to try this, you know, install webinar. And we had 4 attendees.
Yeah.
we had more Pendo people on the webinar than we did customers. And it was just a huge fail. So we learned that the topic was not the most conducive to a one-to-many format. So we switched to offering one-to-one office hours, which has been way more successful and cost effective for us and gets us the outcome that we are actually looking for. So one-to-many is not always the answer for everything.
So you one-to-one office hour. How does that work?
Yeah. I cringe when I hear the word office hours, but my tune has changed because I am not a fan of people setting up office hours just for the sake of office hours.
Sure.
Like we're going to have an hour meeting every Thursday and you show up and, blah, blah. No, like that to me is like also a waste of
unstructured
your time,
and,
everyone else's time. That's not technically one-to-one. That's still you're having to sit around and listen to other people. So we basically needed someone to help people with more technical questions because Pendo it does require an install and there are some nuances to it. And so we just decided we're not going to get around the fact that we need somebody that can like go in, assess, unblock, and get out. So now we have a very kind of like window of time where people have access to this link. It's basically just using Calendly and you get certain, times blocked off. So it protects, our internal resources calendar.
Right.
And it also gives the end user, our customer, what they're looking for, which is dedicated time to like look at this thing on my screen and help me figure out what the heck I did wrong.
Yeah.
So it's not office hours in the way you think of office hours. It's
like
literally
open calendar.
Booking one-on-one calls. Yeah. Booking one-on-one calls at designated times so that if they have a booking, they go to the meeting. If they don't have a booking, they don't. They do something else with their time, their precious time,
Is this a pooled team or are there kind of assigned resources? Like, are you meeting with the same person regularly?
For this particular program, it's one person who we have like gotten approval to use their time and effort. It's somebody from our professional services org. So
gotcha.
We are very grateful to be able to use them.
That's amazing.
These are for our, I should mention this program is for our free customers, our free customer base. So everybody's like, we're not touching this, it's free. We're not getting any revenue from it. And then we just were able to show like how easily and how quickly the right person was able to get in, diagnose the issue, and then like get people on a path to success and upgrading and, all the things. They're like, oh crap, this is great.
Yeah. And it's also like ticket deflection, it keeps your support teams on break fix and instead of configuration. And so that's super cool. And it kind of leads to one of my other questions. You kind of pointed to the fact that, hey, look, we're using a resource that's available, right? And I think probably the number one question that I get from listeners is like, where do I start? Like, where do I start this journey down, scaled or digital customer success? And my answer invariably is you start with, what you have. You look at the problems you're trying to solve. You look at what you have. You kind of marry the two. But maybe, and I think your example was when you stepped into that scaled role, you started with kind of a webinar program. But in general, what advice would you give folks that are trying to get into this world and in terms of where they should start their programs?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head where you have to start with where you are. You have to take inventory of your resources. So a lot of the things that we did when I started with the scaled CS team at Pendo was out of necessity because I had one CSM. I had a program manager who was recently kind of like moved from CSM into this program manager role. So this person was not customer facing anymore, and a community manager. So we really had to lean hard into those like digital approaches and product-led approaches. And I had to protect my one CSM for the 800 customers that we had and the $40 million in revenue that we had under that motion at the time, to the most critical engagements, and like just could not just have him on calls constantly.
No.
So if I had 5 or more CSMs, then that strategy would have looked a lot different, So my advice would be, regardless of how many CSMs you have for this like scaled motion, use their time wisely. You know, you've got to have that foundation of digital and data-driven motions. If you have an education team, or if you have content, you have something built out already, great. Like, use that, build upon it. If you don't, then you're probably going to want to use those resources to start building up that content, and then facilitate the happy path using the digital motions, and use the humans to catch people as they start to veer off and get them back on a path towards their desired outcomes.
The shepherds.
Yes, you have to.
No, go this way.
People.
Go this way.
Yes, no, come on. Yeah,
yeah. That's super good advice. And you know, because I think that the temptation is to design something really stellar and cutting edge and intricate on a PowerPoint slide, and then you get to implementation. It's like, well, what can we actually do?
right.
Yeah,
because I was super lucky that I had that program manager who could just like churn out some digital stuff, because we were down so many people to be customer facing. And I also had recently hired a community manager, so at the same time we were really beefing up our like peer led kind of engagements and using our community to our advantage. And you know, if you have none of those things, then that's really scary. But I can guarantee you have at least a CSM who's really good at customer facing work. And so it's like, if you don't have the digital piece, that's fine. But what you really, really need is like the people who can use data to kind of drive where they go. Yeah. And sometimes we use more like reactive things like sales. Like sales would have to fill out a form to say, hey, this customer is at risk. I need you to get on a call with them. This is their ARR. Here's the opportunity. And I would have them put the CSM, the scale CSM, on the opportunity so that we could associate the revenue.
Yeah, sure.
To, that close one, like we get credit for that as like we influence that revenue. So there was a lot of like, process change that I think a lot of folks had to get used to. But since then, they've really built that team out. I think originally they thought, a scaled CS motion, they only need one CSM or they only need two. And really, like, I think it depends. I don't know what the magic number is, but that team grew. And then I just think you kind of have to figure out right now, what do we do with these people? Yeah. They don't all need to be doing one-to-many, because you've got people, you should be using them, to your advantage.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got those resources in place, you don't want to keep like having them, like hold the fire hose. Like, you have a couple people hold the fire hose, but the rest of them are like, just figuring out how to like eliminate fires before they start.
Right. Yeah.
This weird analogy.
We've been partnering really closely with that team to develop more content though. So like, I think you made a comment about, like using your resources or partnering with other teams. And so I think that's just another great thing that I've experienced at Pendo is like, regardless of where people sit in orgs, we try to help each other out and do what we can to like, get it off the ground. And like I said, if you pitch it as an experiment, people are way more likely to like give you the resources that you need or give you the time that you need from a particular person. And that way you can say like, we're just trying it out and then we'll see what happens. And if you have data to say that it works, then they're way more likely to want to get involved because you have data that now proves their impact.
Yeah, that's super smart. Do you, I really like that. Do you, when it comes to the education side of the world, how are you prioritizing what content to focus on? I mean, I assume you're using the data around you and the inputs from various teams and like ticket volumes and all that kind of stuff, but can you give us a view into that world?
Yeah, I think our primary focus is on our like new products that are coming out. So we have to, we always say nothing gets shipped without documentation. Yeah. So for us, a product release isn't finished until there's documentation. And that is like the bare minimum. And it's not nothing because it is awesome documentation. Then, we have these education managers that are assigned to each product pillar. So, if a huge change is coming out to functionality or a brand new functionality, we kind of assess, all right, like what's the customer impact of this? It might not be the bright, shiny new feature that we're promoting on Pandemonium stage, but it's going to impact, every single one of our customers.
Yeah.
So we make sure we have a plan for, education, whether it be videos, in-app, help center articles. In-app and help center articles are like the fastest, I would say. And then our, the learning and development team kind of comes in and like make sure that our courses are up to date. And like
Totally.
That to me, like I have such a huge respect for people who are doing our like instructional design. It is so challenging to keep up with. And yeah.
I think instructional designers, and anyone who's running kind of e-learning development within a SaaS environment deserves all the accolades that they could ever get in there. I mean, it's just like when you think about, okay, yeah, you've got to do, XYZ. It takes some time to develop these courses. You got to, shoot the screen caps, do the voiceover, whatever it looks like. But then guess what?
Form files.
Yes. Total translation, regionalization. But then guess what? They move the button to the other side, right? So it's like, it becomes a challenge of like, okay, how do I develop this in an agnostic way to where maybe we can just rip and replace the images instead of the voiceover? It's just like planning that goes into a really well-run e-learning machine is insane.
Yeah. And we just did a whole rebrand of our navigation and everyone was like, it's not that big of a change. It's just a color. And we're like, do you know how many videos there are with that old navigation? So it's, my team is just incredible at, I'm like, it's going to be okay if we don't get them all. And they're like, no, we have to make sure that this looks right. It's like, there's new people coming in and I'm just like, everybody's just like so focused on our customer experience. And so
that's awesome.
I think that it also helps that like our company views education as a part of the product experience as well. And we know that not all customers learn in the same way. So you can't say one is better than the other because to that one user, they might enjoy this type of learning style versus this type. So again, it's that solve for the 80. You need to have all types of learning available and let them choose what they want and make sure that it's accessible. I think that was one of the biggest issues that we had previously was people didn't even know about our resources.
Yeah, for sure.
I would get on calls with customers in Scale and they'd be mad they don't have a CSM. And I'm like, I pull up our community that has all of our self-serve resources and they're like, oh, this would have been great. I'm like, it's there.
Oh my God.
Glad I could help. So we made sure that all of our, resources are pointing to each other. And it's all there.
One thing that I feel like a lot of people struggle with is this notion of letting kind of the outcome or the end result overshadow some of the creativity that goes into building some of this stuff. And I'm talking about education content and documentation. Okay, maybe there's a little bit less room for creativity, but when it comes to like digital motions and how to approach like solving for getting a certain message out and doing it in a way that feels human and all that kind of stuff. I feel like the mission to do that sometimes conflicts with the creativity that's needed to do it well. And and I wanted to just get your thoughts on that because what we just talked about kind of reminded me of this.
Yeah, I feel like that is so true where I think sometimes people just get stuck in the same old, and they go, oh, well, this is how we do it in an enterprise motion. So this is how we got to do it in this way and this way. Or they go, this is how we do it in enterprise. So there's no way it's the same down market, and it's like, there's no room for that like flexibility of thinking of, trying new things. Or I feel like a lot of times it gets overcomplicated. Like, what are we really trying to solve for? one of the best examples is I started working really closely with our product-led growth team, the product team, and they were really struggling with install rates, which is why they initially tapped my team to do these like one-to-many install webinars for their free audience. And I think it just came down to like they were treating every single user and every single registrant kind of like the same. Yeah. And, like, is the goal really to get everyone to learn how to install, or is the goal really to get the people who know how to do it and say that it's think it's easy to do it? Because I'd get on calls with engineers and they'd be like, it's not that hard, guys. Installing isn't that hard. It's 4 lines of code. And I'd be like, you don't understand our customers, and da-da-da. And then I was like, light bulb moment. Like, it is really easy. We're just asking the wrong people to do it. And so that completely changed like the whole strategy around pushing people to install the messaging that they got. It was like wild. And so then install rates started going crazy because we weren't trying to force every single installer or person who was logging in to install. We were just trying to get them to like invite somebody who can.
Sure.
Get an engineer in here. It's just like, so I don't think that they were thinking in that way of like, I don't want to say they weren't thinking creatively. I just think they didn't have enough like of the customer knowledge or that background to be like,
get the right message to the right person.
Want everyone to install.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a minute. Like, instead of making install easier, which it's the same way it's been for the beginning of time, just get it in the hands of the right person.
Right time. That's right. Yeah. What a novel idea.
And I think it's hard for people to say, well, these people aren't as important. And I don't think that's what we're saying either.
Yeah.
Again, you have to solve for the 80. You cannot solve for everything. You
can't at all. Do you, is there kind of a brand voice that you operate under? If that makes sense, or do you try to create voice in the things that you're doing?
So for anything in product, we just recently created kind of some like in product standards, because I don't think that our product, I don't think you should know who built a guide versus like if somebody from my team built a guide or somebody from Bill's team built a guide or da-da-da-da. Pendo is the messenger. So it's Pendo's brand. So we do have brand standards that marketing has done, voice and tone, all of that. So now we make sure that all of our guides have that. When it comes to like videos, I let my team infuse a little bit of personality into it, as long as the content is accurate. I mean, I literally listen to some of my team's videos and I start laughing because they're so funny. They're so engaging. And I'm That's like, great. This is, it's nice because you're not just like, select the button on the right. It's like, we're trying to make it fun. We're trying to make it engaging. And, so I think we have a little bit more flexibility in emails, depending on who is the sender and what the intent is. And then our, all of our video content.
Yeah, well, there's a time to humanize and there's a time not to humanize. And I think, if you talk about technical documentation, probably not the time to sneak in a dad joke, right?
A colloquialism, which I've learned a lot about since I've, joined the education team, with just like how much language we're using that is not international or, can be offensive to others. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think about that.
It's a whole thing. Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Yeah, we've even had to modify some of our email messaging depending on like regionalization, and we tend to keep things a little bit more straightforward for our EMEA audiences than we might for our America's audiences and those kinds of things. It's very interesting.
I think that's totally important for sure. Yeah. Then like how many versions of things do you have? Just like
right. Exactly. There's more stuff to track. So look, I've really enjoyed this conversation, but as we kind of start to wind things down, one thing that I always like to do is to give my guests an opportunity to share, what's in their content diet and what they're paying attention to, because it's always fascinating to see, what folks are listening to, and even if it's not, CS related, it's super cool.
I gotta be honest, I do get on LinkedIn and I like to read, like what is thrown at me. I think I just like really have a lot of like peers in the industry, in the biz that I like to talk to and bounce ideas off of. But I don't listen to, sorry, I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts. Like I probably should get into it a little bit more. But I really like reading a lot about the product-led growth function because I think that's very interesting to me. It's so funny in like a customer facing, like having a customer facing background and now being at the opposite end where you're like, do anything you possibly can to not interface with a human. So I just think it's like an interesting challenge. And I think it's cool. So I read a lot of that, like the Lenny podcast, some little blurbs from time to time. I'm more of a reader than a listener. So I'll like read the recaps.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I should probably do more.
I mean, don't should yourself, it's all good. It's whatever it is for you. I love that saying, by the way, don't should yourself. We use it a lot in our household. Don't should yourself. Just be you. Is there anyone that you might want to give a shout out to? Maybe somebody on LinkedIn that you paid a lot of attention to that that's doing cool stuff in digital, or maybe some of the Pendo customers that are doing cool stuff in digital.
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I feel like there's so many Pendo customers that I learn a lot from. There was a recent post from the head of customer success at HubSpot. I don't know if you follow her, Daphne Costa Lopez, I think is her name. So it was like my two worlds combining around like customer success and product-led growth, where like, I don't know, a lot of times people think they're at odds with each other. Like I said, they think product-led or digital is like trying to replace humans, but it was a really interesting post just about like, I don't know, how to invest in like a integrated go-to-market strategy that gets everyone. And I feel like Pendo is at a point now where we're starting to kind of converge and realizing that like we were doing a lot of things in these silos. Anyway, I thought it was a really good, I can send you the link to the to the post.
Yeah, I love her stuff. I'm constantly in awe at how usually when you publish a lot of quantity, your quality tends to go down, but she's always on it, man. Like the stuff that she publishes is
true. I do always kind of perk up when I see her stuff pop up.
For sure. Well, cool. Aside from, I guess, LinkedIn, which is the normal place of engagement these days and in the professional environment, where can people kind of find you, engage with you, connect with you, all that fun stuff?
That's pretty much where I'm at. I don't have a podcast to promote. I don't have a book to promote. I'm just on LinkedIn. If you want to connect, I'm happy to. And I love, love, love talking about all things digital, scale, customer education, whatever you want to call it. I love talking to folks, whether you're a Pendo customer or not. I'm happy to connect.
That's awesome. Well, I love kind of your whole aura about things and what we've talked about today, obviously. But I really appreciate your time and sharing your insights with us. Super valuable stuff. And thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital Customer Success Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. It really helps us to grow and to provide value to a broader audience. You can view the Digital Customer Success definition word map and get more details about the show at digitalcustomersuccess.com. My name is Alex Turkovich. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.